controversial opinions of Disney's DuckTales video game
for TurboGrafx 16 from NEC.
Genesis, the new generation in video games.
Come on, Gaiden, fix that!
It's the video game years, ending the decade with 1989. The systems, the culture, the games. A handheld system enters the scene.
You could game on the go with this weird rectangle white brick.
A globe-trotting duck seeks treasure.
Capcom just nailed it ridiculously.
And Sega starts a console war.
Sega Genesis is the first home console to take a really good shot at emulating the arcade experience at home.
Plus a brawl in the sewers, and a rad accessory for your hand. So build up your neighborhood, but watch out for gators. Press start for 1989.
They said it wasn't humanly possible, but now you can have all the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand. Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. Plus, Game Boy comes with the outrageous new game, Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use the revolutionary video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
There you go, Nintendo. The start of your handheld empire, the Game Boy.
Game Boy is an 8-bit handheld system that was created by Gunpei Yokoi, who was also responsible for the Game & Watch series.
The Game Boy itself is rather large, runs off of 4 AA batteries, and has no backlight and uses a very oddly colored pea soup green type of screen.
You could game on the go with this weird rectangle white brick.
It was made for being portable. You could take it on the subway, you could take it in a car ride, you could drop it, do this and that, and the thing would still keep ticking.
Sound chip, I mean, it has one channel less, but is arguably a better sound chip than the one on the NES.
Oddly, there's a contrast dial on the side where you can turn the contrast up and down. Why would you ever have it on anything but maximum, ever?
So the Game Boy launched with fun games right out the gate.
Of course, you had Super Mario Land, you had Alleyway, which is basically like Breakout, you had tennis, baseball, and of course, Tetris.
Tetris was originally developed by Alexei Pajitnov in the Soviet Union in 1984. He was working as an artificial intelligence engineer for the Soviet Academy of Sciences. And so to test the artificial intelligence of these computer systems, he created this game where basically you had these 4-block puzzle pieces that would come and try to fit them into neat little lines.
Tetris was a game that sort of exploded on the scene, and Tetris overnight became a sensation.
Tetris was secured from both Spectrum Holobyte and Atari spin-off company Tengen.
The rights were being sold back and forth, without any real permission.
It turns out Tetris hadn't been licensed to anyone.
By 1988, you had a bunch of companies basically saying, I have the rights to Tetris, I have the rights to Tetris, because it was a giant cluster. And by that point, the Soviet Union was, okay, we're shut up, all of you, we're actually selling the rights to Tetris now.
But the government officials there did not understand how intellectual property worked, and they asked for way too much money.
Atari comes up and they're like, we would like to buy the rights. And so they buy the rights to arcade versions of Tetris.
Nintendo, having legally gained the rights through Alexei directly, having sent one of their guys over to the Soviet Union to meet with him and to arrange getting the rights, which is really tough to do in the Soviet Union before the Soviet Union had fallen.
Tengen, which was the arm of Atari which created games for the NES, was creating Tetris for the Nintendo Entertainment System without the permission of Nintendo, which had strong clamp down on what could be published on the NES. Eventually, it went to court. Tengen versus Nintendo of America.
Lots of right issues between Atari and Nintendo, going back to Russia and developers and who actually owned the rights to it. huge convoluted mess.
Eventually Nintendo, long story short, won their case.
Tengen lost the battle and had to recall all of its Tetris games.
Because Tetris was packaged in, you would get this demographic that you would probably never ever get launching a video game system, and that's you got adults, you got kids that want to play this game.
This was marketed towards adults, not just children.
Right.
You had businessmen playing this on the go to work, not just kids.
What made the Game Boy popular was its wide appeal and Tetris. I mean, 46% of the console's users were female.
The Game Boy was around for a long time. I always thought it would die out a lot sooner.
A Game Boy that was in use during Desert Storm in 1991 in Kuwait, and it had been through a fire. And the whole casing was charred and black, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? The soldier who had it turned it on afterward, and the dang thing still worked.
This is a system that lasted about 11 years.
The Game Boy competed with the Sega Game Gear, the Atari Lynx, and the Turbo Express, all technically better systems, but it destroyed them.
The main thing the Game Boy proves is that fun wins out over technology.
Sure.
Because it really is an underwhelming piece of hardware to look at until you're given 4 really good cartridges and you realize that you're playing hours later. So basically in Friday the 13th, you play a camp counselor, and you maneuver around Camp Crystal Lake.
And the goal of the game is to find and defeat Jason 3 times before he kills all the kids in the camp.
There's like a Jason alarm that goes off if he's near one, and you have to find your way to the cabin and fight him off.
When you're outside of cabins, it's a side-scrolling game. You jump over little enemies, snakes, you can throw rocks, you can get knives, you can get other sorts of weapons. But the map system makes no sense.
You can be traveling left the whole time on this, side-scrolling image and be going, in reality, 360 degrees. It doesn't translate well to a 3-dimensional world.
When you walk into a cabin, it switches to a pseudo first-person mode. And when you fight Jason, you move left and right, and you attack.
This game was not well received, and even Nintendo Power cited it as the 6th worst game ever made.
Nightmare on Elm Street, not nearly as bad as Friday the 13th. Here you are a teenage kid, you're trying to kill Freddy.
The actual goal of the game is to find Freddy's bones and burn them in the furnace at the end of the game.
If you keep getting hit enough, your sleep meter, your Z's will go down and you'll fall asleep. And then you are transported to the exact same house, but in a nightmarish world where Freddy controls and blah, things happen.
You would fight snakes and bats outside of houses, and inside houses you'd fight ghosts and other creatures.
Not a good game per se, but fair. The platforming is decent, and at least you know where you're going, as opposed to Friday the 13th.
Quest for Glory, So You Want to Be a Hero is a hybrid RPG adventure game developed by Sierra Entertainment.
What's so neat about Quest for Glory is it's an attempt to mix a role-playing game with something more like their usual point-and-click adventures.
Sense of realism that was not found in a lot of games at the time. Like there was a day-night cycle and things changed during night, like the setting changed.
The game was criticized for being too time-consuming. The realism had you spending a lot of time trying to build skills.
The more you used a skill, the more experience you got in it. Like if you were a magic user and you used a magic spell, you would get better at it.
So there is fighting. There are classes that you can choose, but there's also the puzzle solving that you've come to expect from Sierra games.
Similarly to King's Quest, Quest for Glory drew inspiration from themes and characters from Legends.
It was a game that was very influential on others later on, and really was a big hit for Sierra at the time.
A Boy and His Blob, Trouble on Bloblonia.
A Boy and His Blob was a very interesting game. Again, one of those real experimental titles that was made by David Crane and Gary Kitchen.
The blob escapes from a planet where the evil emperor only feeds him candy, and comes to Earth and befriends a boy who only feeds him candy.
They wonder what I've been smoking.
The gameplay revolves around feeding your blob different kinds of jelly beans to make him transform so you can progress.
Things like bubblegum or licorice will change him into like a bowling ball or a ladder or something like that, and you had to really think.
The concept for this game is very original, and I give them a lot of props for that.
I never really got into this game. It was a little too obtuse to me.
There is so much trial and error in this game.
I got lost fairly often in the game, but looking back now, I can really appreciate it.
I had very big plans. I wanted to launch a video game, an animated movie, and a toy line at the same time.
Pat says I talk too much. Use the things the blob turns into to solve puzzles. Save the day!
And now, it should have been a video game in 1989.
Oh, hello, I'm Eric, and here's the stuff from 1989 that should have been made into a video game, but was not. In movies, Blind Fury for the Game Boy. In this unique Twitch-based game, you would have to close your eyes and wear headphones to take advantage of Game Boy's stereo sound, and then listen for audio cues to figure out which direction to swing your sword. The game would of course receive low scores in the graphics department. A Weekend at Bernie's for the Sega Genesis. Keep people from being suspicious as you and your friend try to animate a corpse without getting caught in this stealthy adventure game. What kind of host invites you to his house for the weekend and dies on you? Bernie, that's who. In music, Girl You Know It's True by Milli Vanilli for the Sega Genesis. Ancestor of Parappa the Rapper, the objective would be to lip sync to songs with perfect timing lest you get caught at the cost of your career in this risky rhythm game. Girl you know it's, girl you know it's, girl you know it's, girl you know it's, girl you know it's. In television, America's Funniest Home Videos for the NES. In this precursor to Jackass, you would play as a video submitter trying to win America's Funniest Home Videos by submitting your funniest and most painful accidents. Ow, my groin! I'm just kidding, I meant my balls. And that's what should have been a video game in 1989, and I want to play them.
Hard Drivin was put out by Atari.
Yes.
And it was hard.
Yes.
This game had one of the first 3D polygon driving environments, and it also had its own custom-built simulator cabinet.
Hard Drivin, its sort of claim to fame was that it was like a realistic driving arcade game. It had the full clutch and shifting.
It's one of the first driving games I remember actually having a manual transmission where you actually had to time the clutch like a real car. It wasn't just like, you'd actually have to have the right amount of pressure.
That's great, but when you're a little kid, you can't play the game.
At a time when most games like Outrun and Pole Position were using scaled 2D graphics, this game was using filled polygon 3D graphics.
It had this early polygonal feel. There was just something very cool about it. You see this 3D world and you want to kind of explore it. You want to see the loop, you want to see the jump, you want to see how fast you can go on the speed course. And I never got to do any of that.
No, I could barely stay on the road.
Shadowgate was a point-and-click adventure game originally released on the Apple Macintosh and later ported to the NES.
You have a cursor, which is you gotta click things, and that's cumbersome a little bit with an NES control pad.
You would have options that you could choose before doing something else, either activating an item in your menu or touching something on the tiny box that was your playfield on the screen.
The goal of the game is to defeat the Warlock Lord, who's trying to summon the demon behemoth out of hell.
In Shadowgate, it's very easy to die at just about any turn.
You have to go through Castle Shadowgate solving puzzles, and you absolutely have to have a torch, otherwise you fall down and break your neck.
Investigating the wrong stone or the wrong item on screen will lead to a rather grisly depiction of your death.
You're probably gonna die, and it's probably gonna be funny. Actually, the NES version is surprisingly not censored.
It does a wonderful job with music and flavor text of creating a very gloomy atmosphere of a castle that you want to explore.
There were multiple sequels, including one on the Nintendo 64, which I could not get anywhere. I couldn't get out of the first room.
For the masochist or the PC gamer, something like Shadowgate on the Nintendo was a welcome change of pace from all the different platformers, and the port works out surprisingly well once you get used to moving an arrow cursor around with the D-pad.
Populous was a real-time strategy game originally released on the Amiga, and it's considered the first God game.
It is a simulation game, kind of like SimCity.
So in Populous, you're like making worlds in a book somehow.
The game has 500 levels in which you try to increase your followers and destroy the enemy followers.
I don't think I was ever really too good at it because I was way too fascinated by all the different powers you could use to kill dudes.
Your divine power, or mana, increases when you get more followers, and then you can use more powers.
So instead of like, flattening the land so that, your populace could grow and become better, I was charging my lightning bolts so I could just shock a dude and laugh at him, or charging up my meteor shower and just raining fire on everyone.
Unlike SimCity, Populous wanted to have an ending, so the two sides at the end, epic battle.
Populous is perhaps Peter Molyneux's most well-received game, generally, I would say.
The game was popular enough for there to be several sequels and even a spin-off.
Holy freaking shit! DuckTales is the best video game ever made.
That's debatable.
Nope, no it's not.
Alright, we've already talked about some bad licensed games. Let's talk about a great one.
Seems like it'd be strange. I mean, yes, DuckTales was a popular show at the time, but why would it make such a great game? Capcom just nailed it ridiculously.
You play as a geriatric duck who attacks people with a cane, eats ice cream to restore his health, and doesn't wear pants. You can't make this stuff up.
Right from the beginning, you could go to any level you want. It's just like the character select screen from Mega Man, so you can just skip levels.
What made DuckTales interesting, from a gameplay perspective, was the very unique control scheme that the game used, which was Scrooge McDuck's cane doubled as a pogo stick.
Scrooge McDuck's cane is one of the coolest weapons in games. I mean, you can smack stuff, you can hit guys with it, you can jump on it like a pogo stick, you can pogo it up, and that's how I got through every level. I just pogo through everything.
And it's another Capcom game that just had amazing music. Every level had fantastic music.
And people remember mostly that the Moon music, because a lot of times that's regarded as some of the best music on the entire console.
It has that one song everyone's obsessed with. I don't know why everyone's so obsessed with that song. There's a lot of great chiptune songs out there. That's not the only chiptune song out there.
This was like the cartoon on your NES. I mean, it was the right tone, the right feel, the right wacky enemies.
There was connections to the series. You had Huey, Dewey, and Louie showing up. You had Launchpad taking you back to Duckburg if you wanted to drop off your money.
And they also made an option where you could end the game with $0, because they said otherwise it would be very un-Scrooge-like.
And it would kind of pave the way for other Capcom Disney games to follow.
There's a reason why it was remade and re-released over 20 years later. It has a special place in people's hearts and also is, frankly, a lot of fun still to play today.
DuckTales, woo!
Hey, paisanos, it's the Super Mario Brothers Super Show!
Captain N, the Game Master.
Man, was 1989 like the golden era for video game cartoons? You had two that came out this year.
The Super Mario Bros. Super Show was a part live action, part cartoon show that was based on Super Mario Bros. 1 and Super Mario Bros. 2.
Alright, it's campy, and it's really, really crazy. You go back and watch that now, you're like, what did this even have to do with Mario?
The show starred professional wrestler Captain Lou Albano as Mario and actor Danny Wells as Luigi.
Sure, we got lots of characters from the games, we saw the power-ups and stuff, but there was always these really weird stories to go along with it.
Why does Toad have this bizarre voice? This is not what anyone pictured Toad's voice to be.
Right over there! Lake spaghetti sauce!
They always had special guests drop by.
Like Nicole Eggert from Charles in Charge, for example, would be on the show.
Lou Albano also did an ending theme for the show called Do the Mario.
Swing your arms from side to side. Come on, it's time to go do the Mario.
As far as cartoons based on games go, this one wasn't bad.
I did love the Zelda segments.
So you had Super Mario Brothers cartoon like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but then Friday, it was a new episode of The Legend of Zelda.
I can definitely tell you that the Zelda cartoons were an abysmal mess.
I like the Zelda cartoons. I thought they were fun.
It was more adventuresome. There was a little bit more to build off of in terms of storytelling when it came to Legend of Zelda versus Super Mario Brothers.
Link was a whiny little brat, and the princess was a whiny little brat, too.
This cartoon gave Link a voice. He was kind of annoying.
Looking good, princess. Especially from this angle.
And he had his catchphrase. Well, excuse me, princess.
It's a little creepy how he's always trying to grab a smooch from Zelda.
He's always trying to get a kiss. Zelda would never put out.
Kiss me.
No! I just remembered! This is all your fault!
My fault?
Yes!
Captain N, the Game Master.
Captain N the Game Master involved a guy who could get pulled into his Nintendo.
The character Captain N first appeared in Nintendo Power, which was a comic that was created by Randy Studdard.
Almost none of these characters actually really resembled what they were supposed to resemble. Mega Man was short and green.
And he talked like this.
Yeah, and Simon Belmont was
a wuss.
A pretty boy with a big poofy do.
Let's make up this a fake princess, Princess Lana, who's just like, teenage boy's wet dream, I guess.
You have Mother Brain as the bad guy, the primary bad guy. You have King Hippo as one of the sidekicks, and Eggplant Wizard.
Yeah.
And then those are your three primary, and Dr. Wily would pop in every now and then as well.
Mother Brain was a good pick for a boss, and she was voiced by Levi Stubbs, the same guy that did the voice of the plant in Little Shop of Horrors.
Giving me a perfect opportunity to strike a fatal blow at the heart of Videoland.
And then eventually Game Boy was sent in as a not subtle product placement.
But it was neat to see them pull these different licenses together and, try to give you a cohesive adventure every week.
It was neat because Captain N used, accessories from the Nintendo.
Yeah, he had a zapper.
He had a zapper, and then he had a Nintendo control pad that made him do these fantastical abilities.
Captain N is chock full of video game references and characters from other Nintendo games. It's just good stuff.
It wasn't great, it was not great. But considering what kids will watch and what they did watch back in the day, it could have been worse. Could have been the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. I'll say that.
And now the gaming innovation for 1989.
Oh, well, that's where the flute is. Hello. This is Rue for the video game innovation of 1989. What new technology graced the world and changed the face of gaming forever? Exterminator by Premier Technology was the first video game to use completely digitized graphics. From clay model bugs to digitized roomscapes, you basically had to exterminate the crap out of an entire household. The technology was used to more popularity a few years later in games such as Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat 4. That's the video game innovation of 1989. And don't forget, it's not just nostalgia, it's science. I should really put something in this one day.
Baseball Stars, or Baseball Stars Triple Crown in Japan, is a baseball game that was developed and published by SNK for the NES.
It had simulation elements to it where, you had the correct amount of people on the field, etc. like that. But it was a very arcadey game.
This game was so just well done in terms of the animation, in terms of the graphics, in terms of the controls.
It had, made up teams. It had the All-Star team, which had, names of famous baseball players like Ruth.
It was the first sports game to have a battery backup. You can have a full season of baseball on your NES and Baseball Stars.
The game became a franchise series for SNK, and there's been 5 sequels. In fact, their create a team, create a player mode has been basically a standard function for any baseball game ever since.
All the players had individualized offensive and defensive stats. You could create a player. You could create a team. You could draft players. You could fire players. You could upgrade your players based upon money that you would acquire by winning games.
You can have more of a thinking man's game, a little bit more of a game manager's type style, and because of that, Baseball Stars is really fondly remembered to this day.
It's just one of those games that really pushed the NES to its limits, and there was so much thought put into a sports title like this. And then without having a player's license, and without having a team license, it is arguably the best NES baseball game.
This Christmas, Pepsi would like to help you celebrate the holidays with a chance of winning a present from Mario in the Pepsi Nintendo Holiday Game, where you could win one of thousands of terrific Nintendo prizes, like these action sets, game packs, and best of all, the sensational new Game Boy. So hurry up and play before it's all over. Look on specially marked cans and bottles of Pepsi and Diet Pepsi for your chance to win.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a phenomenal side-scrolling beat-em-up by Konami based on the original cartoon series, and it just dominated arcades.
Like so many kind of games at the time, it's a beat 'em up.
Awesome.
Amazing. Especially if you're a Turtle fan.
The Ninja Turtles arcade game is about the closest you can get to playing the cartoon. The music's right, the enemies are right, the characters are all there. It's pretty much everything you'd ever want in a Turtles game, just wrapped up into a neat little package and then put into an arcade.
Beautiful 4-player cabinet.
You had the choice to pick between all 4 turtles. You battle your way through to save April and Splinter.
Excellent graphics, excellent sounds from the TV show, excellent voice samples.
You had characters like Bebop and Rocksteady, Baxter Stockman, Krang, Shredder. They're all there, all your favorites.
The animation's great, the sprites are so colorful. It's so much fun just using the turtles and their weapons to kind of battle your way through the foot.
They worked with the perspective of the levels too, so that almost like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, where you start moving down in the lower part of the level in a diagonal, and you had to deal with perspective differently with giant balls coming down staircases.
Fluid controls,
destructible environments in some levels.
The attract mode for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was unmistakable. It had the same theme song from the cartoon and the beginning of the opening sequence.
The sight of people just milling and crowding about a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles machine is probably very familiar to you.
In my local arcade, they had to put it in a special spot because they knew it was high traffic and there were going to be people standing around it.
This is a beautiful cabinet. It's classic late 80s schmaltz, and I love it to death.
Whoever designed the artwork decided to get someone to dress up as April and stand in the most awkward position possible. She's just standing like this on the side of the cabinet and perpetually smiling at you, and it's really unsettling.
When the game was ported later to the NES, they actually added content. It was not a bad port from an arcade game.
It had extra levels. A lot of times you see less levels. This one had all them and more.
Yeah, the graphics were toned down a bit, and of course voice samples taken out.
It didn't have the feel of the arcade. 2 enemies on the screen at one time, that's it. I was a spoiled little brat when it came to this game, and my friends were like, this game's awesome. I'm like, no, this game stinks. I want the arcade version.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game has lasting appeal to this day. I see it in arcades, and I always see people playing it.
This is one of those games that you could just play forever. Like, you just pump quarters into this thing and keep playing through.
Just a brilliant, brilliant game.
Introducing TurboGrafx-16, the next generation video game system. It's 4 times faster, so the games are more exciting. There are almost 10 times as many colors, so the arcade quality graphics are even more intense. And you can expand your system with a CD player for CD games with sound effects that are turbocharged. TurboGrafx-16 from NEC, the higher energy video game system.
The TurboGrafx-16 Entertainment Super System, aka PC Engine in Japan, was developed by Hudson Soft and NEC.
Hudson at the time had been trying to pitch higher powered chips to Nintendo for use in their cartridges so that they could get more graphical power out of their games. And Nintendo wasn't interested.
So Hudson actually went out and approached different companies, and the only one that they could find that was interested in making a system was NEC. So that became the joint venture where they both actually split profits.
It's an 8-bit CPU with a 16-bit GPU and another chip that is the graphics encoder.
Like the Genesis, this also had a palette of 512 colors, but it could put like 481 of them on screen, if I remember correctly.
The PC Engine did so well in Japan that it actually outsold the Famicom shortly after its release.
I love the TurboGrafx. I was so excited to get the TurboGrafx.
This was a great little system that really had awful marketing.
Obviously the marketing was terrible. I mean, look at this box. You can't really see the system of the games, you see some kid's face.
Right.
Look at him, he's having a great time.
That's because he's playing the TurboGrafx-16.
Yeah, rightly so.
There were a lot of really great games released in Japan that never even came to America.
Hundreds upon hundreds.
TurboGrafx 16 was always the other system in my mind, because I mean it was always Sega and Nintendo.
The thing that kind of sucks about the TurboGrafx 16 is it only had one controller port.
So this wasn't a multiplayer system out of the box.
Super short wire, which is stupid.
You couldn't even get composite video out. You had to buy a Turbo Booster or a Turbo Booster Plus just to get composite video out.
Yeah.
Which is stupid.
That was an extra, chunk of cash that you shouldn't have had to have spent.
The games came on these in a jewel case.
Yeah.
With a tiny little credit card size
Cue
game.
card, yeah.
It got packed in with Keith Courage and Alpha Zone.
Which is an okay game. It's not bad, but it's not a system seller.
But they so badly wanted something that looked like a Mario game.
They should have packed it in with Blazing Lasers. I think it would have done a lot better. Or R-Type.
It became a niche system, mainly known for excellent shooters.
I mean, in Japan, the PC Engine was wildly successful.
Right. It's a very good system. It did a lot of firsts.
It would later come out with a CD-ROM attachment, which was the first CD system in the US for a video game console.
It did not rely on things like FMV games or anything like that to sell itself.
Too bad the CD system initially cost $400.
Initially, the TurboGrafx 16 sold well in the US, but ultimately it suffered because of a lack of third-party software developers.
It was just a unique system and marketed horribly by NEC.
Guardian Legend was an action-adventure slash shoot-'em-up developed by Compile, who also did the Puyo Puyo games.
You play as the Guardian, who is a robot android type character, and she can turn into a spaceship.
You have shooting segments, and then you have segments where you're running around overhead.
You maneuver around trying to find certain weapons and items to progress in the dungeon. And as you open up tubes within this planet that you're exploring, you actually travel through the planet in spaceship form. And that's how you navigate, is by flying through the interior of the planet, which is very, very cool.
The game was actually received fairly well, and it was actually praised for its odd genre mixing.
It's really inventive, it's really fun to get into, it's easy to get into, and it's a great game. You should try it.
The game really went on to influence a lot of things with how it handles multiple genres, and showed that you could take something like a shooter and turn it into something else entirely.
Hey, Mr. Block, can I go to the bathroom?
2 minutes.
Oh, yes! Good there. Oh, yes, yes! I'm in the tube! Oh, yes, yes! Oh! All right!
Introducing Lynx from Atari, the color video game you can get away with. Well, sometimes.
The Lynx was an Atari handheld put out in 1989, and it came packed in with California games.
It had a backlit display, and it also had a right-hand and left-hand configuration.
You could flip it for lefties or righties, because they had buttons on the top and bottom.
This was considered the first console that could zoom and distort sprites.
I mean, it looked awesome, and everybody wanted it when it came out, but it was so expensive.
The system had pseudo 3D graphics that did things that were very similar to Mode 7 over a year before the Super Nintendo.
Graphically, it was just so impressive.
Yeah,
I'm like the waves
water,
and the water.
yeah.
It's just like, this is unreal that this is, I'm able to play this in my hands.
Why California Games?
I don't know. That's not really good on any system.
No, I mean,
stupid game.
The Lynx didn't have many third-party games, but it had a lot of cool ports of Atari arcade games.
Blue Lightning was probably the best game for the Lynx because it had nice scaling graphics and stuff like that. It's pretty fun.
You can network up to 17 players via its Comlink system, but most of the games only used up to 8 players.
Technically speaking, it is an impressive console.
Takes 6 AA batteries, the first version does.
Yeah.
If you're going to use the power adapter, it's not really portable then. So then what's really the point?
They had later made a more compact version, which was cool. It was just like Meteor. It was like a football.
The system actually started out successfully, but by 1995, the Game Gear and this system combined had sold under 7 million units versus Game Boy's 16 million.
Gauntlet should have been out a year earlier, so they could have packed that in.
Yeah.
That would have sold some systems.
It was a shame that it didn't do better.
It's not really well known, and it sort of fizzled out after only a few years.
WWF WrestleMania was the first of the licensed WWF games on the NES, but it was the second WWF game overall.
You get Bam Bam Bigelow, you get Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Honky Tonk Man, Andre the Giant, and $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase.
But one of the things I find really fun about this game is that they actually worked in some of the unique movesets with some of the certain wrestlers in the game.
And it had a great intro screen. It was like, full Hulk Hogan ripping shirt, and it looked great. And then you played the game, and it sucked.
There's no grapple system.
There's no grapple system, so there's just strikes.
Each character could pick up health pickups which were unique to them. Hulk Hogan's was a crucifix.
The characters had different button combinations to do the same thing. So like 4 of the characters pin with a certain button combination, 2 do it with another. It doesn't make any damn sense at all.
No.
It's also worth noting that Hulk Hogan in the game, of course, has the ability to body slam Andre the Giant. He's the only one that can do it in the game. Just like he was the only one who could do it in the ring, brawler!
The only good thing about WrestleMania for the Nintendo is the music. The renditions of all of the wrestlers' theme songs are fantastic. And that's really all I can say about WrestleMania that's positive.
Prince of Persia is a cinematic platformer developed by Jordan Mechner, the guy that made Karateka.
So this game was pretty fantastic. You had a time limit to rescue a princess from an evil sultan.
It's really hard to get through it in 60 minutes.
It was a puzzle dungeon, kind of. You'd have to hit the right panel for the gate to come up, and you'd have to time it right, so by the time you get to that gate, it's still open, because it would slowly close.
Yeah.
It was one of the first computer games I remember playing that gave me a real sense of wonder in terms of I wanted to see what was around the next corner.
The reason the animation was so fluid is because Jordan Mechner used a technique called rotoscoping, where you frame by frame painstakingly trace over someone, and he traced over his brother.
It was a unique type of platformer for that time. It was very deliberate. It wasn't Super Mario Brothers. This was more realistic physics. You couldn't just drop down any number of flights and hit the ground and still be okay. If you drop down too far, you're like, oh my god, I broke my legs and I'm dead.
But yeah, I mean, it was really cool to see your character jump over a ledge, not make the jump, and fall to their death on a bed of spikes. Yeah. And you'd see the blood, and your guy all, twisted up on the spikes. It was kind of neat.
While you had a sword, you didn't fight that many enemies. You basically had to figure out puzzles and avoid traps and jump pits.
Although the game was a critical success, initially it was a commercial failure in North America, but it did really well in Europe and Japan.
So this is the start of a huge franchise. PlayStation games, PlayStation 2, a movie. They made a movie of Prince of Persia. Who would have thought that? Golden Axe was a fantastic hack and slash game.
It was a standard brawler, but it looked so different. The music was great in it.
It's got one of those really great kind of dungeon crawler, medieval wizards and wizardry, barbarian feels to it.
The goal of the game is to take down the evil entity Death Adder, not Death Takeawayer, but Death Adder.
You could play as the barbarian, you could play as the dwarf, and you could play as the faster female fighter.
I actually like playing as the girl because she had the best magic in the game.
She also had the best ass.
Each player has different magic abilities and different levels of magic, which you can replenish by getting potions.
If you got all the vials for the female, a big dragon would come out versus just a few flames if you only had one or two.
There's little animals you can ride on.
I love being able to take the butt of my sword and crack it on an enemy's skull.
Who can forget the floating turtle island?
Let's build a village. Let's put it on the back of this giant turtle. That makes logical sense.
It's crazy.
Or the in-between things where you're all sitting around a campfire, like in an RPG, and the elves come out.
And they're carrying gifts for you, but you must kick them.
And then, of course, there's a humongous eagle that takes you right to Death Adder's castle.
Absolutely.
So,
where else is he going to go?
Love me a good barbarian game.
The Power Glove for your NES. Now you and the games are one. The Power Glove.
I hate the Power Glove. It's terrible.
It's awful.
The Power Glove came with these monstrous sensors that you had to somehow put on your TV, and it's not very convenient.
This is why I'm alive as a child. This is a controller that responds to my movement on the screen. I can drive Rad Racer with this club. I can punch out Mike Tyson. The problem is, it works like ass.
I had an uncle with a lot of money. He was like, what do you want for your birthday? And I was like, I want the Power Glove.
I actually got the Power Glove, I believe for Christmas when it came out.
And I felt so bad that he got that for me, and it was awful, and I couldn't say anything about it.
I was trying to punch with a little mag. I could get him to kind of move his arm like a little bit, but the thing just did not work well.
Most people did try to like play the games like this. Imagine trying to play Mario Brothers with 2 fingers just like this, because you can't get the Power Glove to do anything appropriate. Okay, you're supposed to do this: run, jump.
More games were planned for the Power Glove, but they never ended up coming out, probably because it was so unpopular.
You know, I feel cool just wearing this for like 5 seconds.
God, I remember how much I wanted this thing.
And now I feel like a douche.
The Power Glove has been referenced and parodied many times from its release up until this day. It's a running gag.
The Power Glove.
I love the Power Glove.
It's so bad.
It's bad, not in a good way.
I'm taking this off now, it's making my hand clammy.
And now, the popular pinball games of 1989.
Ian here with the popular pinball machines of 1989. Vyra and the Party Monsters by Midway. Smooth ramps, dancing boogeymen, and the gorgeous Elvira make this machine a must-play. Earthshaker by Williams. This Pat Lawler disaster classic adds a shaker motor to bring the theme alive. Black Knight 2000 by Williams. This Steve Ritchie follow-up to the original is not only a blast to play, but has a rockin' soundtrack for the ages. And those are the popular pinball machines of 1989, because there's more to life than video games.
Tecmo Bowl is a football arcade game developed by Tecmo, of course, and it was also ported to the NES famously.
It's just amusing to me that such a successful American football game was made by a Japanese company, Tecmo. But it's actually pretty dang good for its time.
If you liked football, you had to play Tecmo Bowl.
A little more of an arcadey style game. I mean, like Madden, this is not.
And then you have 4 plays to choose from, usually 2 passing or 2 running plays. And on defense, if you choose the precise play that the offense chooses, usually the play will be broken up and be squashed or destroyed.
But no peeking, don't look at my controller while I'm trying to select my play.
It was 9 on 9, it was arcade style action, fast, frantic, fun. When you knock into a player, they get thrown up off the screen.
Between, like, you know, when you got a touchdown, you'd have like a little cutscene.
Yeah, a little
and
animation.
There's even a halftime show.
It had the NFL player's license. So the players had different stats.
You had some teams that were severely overpowered compared to some, especially when you talk about the Raiders.
Bo Jackson. Oh my God, that was so uneven.
Lawrence Taylor on the New York Giants was like almost as fast as Bo Jackson. So you can like break up every field goal attempt if you want an extra point.
Yeah, they just had the city names, right?
Yeah, just had the city names, but they had all the players for the correct cities.
Yeah.
This isn't a simulation by any means. This is solely a bash, button mash, fun game of football checkers.
It bridged the gap. Like, even if you didn't like football, you enjoyed playing Tecmo Bowl because it's that much fun.
And if you didn't like video games, but you were a sports guy, you played Tecmo Bowl.
I was never dang good at the game, but even I can appreciate its merits.
The NES port was insanely popular and fondly remembered to this day by almost everybody, except me.
Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. It was a launch title, so if you got a Game Boy, you probably got Super Mario Land to go along with it to play with your Tetris.
What's interesting about Super Mario Land is it's very familiar, yet feels very different. For instance, there is no fireball. You get a ball that bounces at a 45-degree angle, so out in the wide open, it's basically useless.
This was the first game of the series that was produced by Game Boy's creator Gunpei Yokoi and did not involve Shigeru Miyamoto.
I guess the idea might have been, you know, they gave it to Yokoi because he knew more about the hardware and he knew how to use it better. Anyway, the result is that you have something a little bit different than your standard Mario game.
There were some pretty major differences from the other Mario games. For example, there was no Princess Toadstool or Peach, there was Princess Daisy, and there was no Bowser, there was a mysterious spaceman Tatanga. It's a weird game.
The game is only, I believe, 4 worlds long, which is great because it's perfect for a car trip or a quick afternoon game. You can play through and beat it and in probably 25 minutes if you know what you're doing.
So not only is there platforming in this game, but there's even a couple shmup stages in there.
Shoot 'em up.
Yeah, shmup. What I said.
Whoa, did you see Mario? He's got a sub. He doesn't have to swim anymore. He could use his sub and he could shoot the bad guys.
A little bit outside the box here for Super Mario Land. It was one of those early titles that if you owned a Game Boy, you bought Super Mario Land. And for that, it's a very important early title.
You Force for Nintendo. You Force. You Force. Nothing but you, and the game.
With the U-Force power field, nothing comes between you and the game.
You Force.
Blazing Lasers, known in Japan as Gunhead, was a vertical shmup developed by Hudson Soft and Compile, the company that developed Gun-Knack.
Fantastic music, tons of levels, tons of enemy variety and level variety, and a great power-up system that you see in other shooters by Compile.
You can change and upgrade your weapons to the more powerful stuff, and there's just power-ups floating all over the place, back and forth.
There are some insane weapons in this game. You can get giant metal balls that spin around your ship, making you almost invincible. You can get lasers that by the time you finish upgrading them basically fill the entire screen every time you fire them.
The power-ups are really cool and interesting in this game, but I really liked that you had 5 different speeds. You could go slow for precision, fast, which got a little bit reckless, but you could always change your speeds. You didn't have to get power-ups for that.
It was kind of like the beginning of showing that the NEC console was going to be a premier place for shooters.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a side-scrolling platformer by Konami under the name Ultra, and it was loosely based on the cartoon, and I mean loosely.
It played nothing like the arcade game, which came out the same year.
Yeah.
It was more of an action platformer of sorts.
At this point, they couldn't translate the arcade version over. They couldn't do that.
It was one of the most successful third-party games on the Nintendo.
Some of the characters are familiar from the cartoon. You've got the Turtles, April O'Neil, Shredder, Splinter.
And then you fight wacky, bizarre enemies that you never see in the TV show, like robots.
And sludge monsters.
And flame men. But that's okay. It's actually pretty well done.
On the fly, you can switch between any Ninja Turtle.
And then each has their own weapon, their own different reach with that weapon.
And their own life bar. Each one of these turtles basically acts as a life.
God help you if you lose Donatello, because he's hands down the best turtle. He's got that long range. You're screwed without him.
You can really go almost anywhere right from the get-go. But you need certain items across certain objects. It's almost like a Zelda element to it.
Yeah, it's almost like Zelda 2 in the way that you have an overworld where you can progress differently based on how you move in the overworld.
A lot of people talk about how frustratingly hard the game is.
I just kept getting stuck in the water level where you have to defuse the bombs. It's so precise, the movements you had to make.
And you had all those stupid electrical pink things all over the place, and you had to defuse all those bombs before time ran out.
Damn that level. It's hard. Damn, it's hard.
This is what you had, and you enjoyed it until you got to that last level with all the conveyor belts and missile heads flying at you, and that's when you wanted to shut the game off. But up to that point, this was a fun game.
This is an era of a lot of experimentation on the NES, and I can definitely appreciate what Konami was trying to do with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on this.
Ninja Turtles are my homeboys. Woo!
Oh my god, Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road is fantastic.
Oh my god, we both agree on something at the same time.
It's just one big track, and you have little cars that are going around, and you have to gauge, where to turn left and right. It's not a, from behind view.
The arcade cabinet has 3 wheels. You're always racing against the Iron Man, and it's just fun. There's bumps, and the trucks react appropriately.
Once you get used to the controls, it's a lot of fun to play in the arcade with friends. Or enemies.
You can play as either the blue, the red, or the yellow car. Don't even think about trying to drive that white car. That's Ivan's car. Nobody drives Ivan's car but Ivan.
This was one of the first games alongside Super Sprint where you could upgrade your vehicle by getting more points.
On the course, or somehow money bags would be on the course and nitro you could get, and then you can upgrade like your top speed and your shocks and your tires, and that added a nice little element in between the races.
Between levels, you also saw your pit woman who had ginormous tatas.
It was always cool to see that on the screen in my high school's activity center.
Yeah.
The different courses were nice, how they had like figure eights and you could like bump into, you know, like going across, you can bump into the other guy and get totally thrown off. You'd be totally flipped around.
It's odd that it's a 3-player game because most games at the time were 1, 2, or 4 players. So I mean, just think you don't have enough friends or there's not enough interest. They probably just couldn't fit 4 wheels, I get it.
Dragon Warrior was a localized version of Dragon Quest, which was a huge, huge RPG franchise in Japan.
So Dragon Warrior was incredibly important in Japan when it was first created for the Famicom in 1986.
Yuji Horii, the creator, was inspired by Western RPGs, and his goal was to really just popularize the genre and video games in general.
The game is fantastic. It's the definition of a press A to win game. Literally, you cannot lose this game if you just level up to the proper level before you take on a task.
The console foundation of many tropes we find in role-playing games today. You have your experience points, you have your magic spells, you have your attack and defense points, and you can equip items and weapons and armor. I mean, really, really classic, basic stuff.
So Nintendo thought, we're gonna bring it over to the US. The problem is that no one cared, no one bought it the first year it came out.
They overestimated America's burgeoning love for old English dialogue text and having to choose stairs to go upstairs.
The problem is that this was a game developed first in 1986. This is 1989, and it's aged a bit.
What Nintendo did a year later in '90 was offer an insane deal. If you bought or re-upped your Nintendo Power subscription, they sent you a free copy of Dragon Warrior.
If you buy a 1-year subscription, $20 subscription to our gaming magazine, Nintendo Power, you will get for free a $50 NES game.
But Nintendo didn't trust that kids would know what they were doing. So besides pumping the hell out of Dragon Warrior in issues of Nintendo Power, they don't only send you the game, they send you a huge handbook that was literally a walkthrough of the entire game.
And a reference card for what level you should be at.
Posters and maps.
Posters and maps of all the enemies in the game. Spoiler alert, here's every enemy in the game, its hit points and what you need to do to beat it.
It is the granddaddy of console RPGs and should be respected. Dang it.
Minesweeper and Solitaire.
Done! We're talking about Minesweeper and Solitaire?
I mean, you always play games on your computer, but these were games built into the OS.
Yeah. Solitaire is exactly what it says it is. It is a game of solitaire cards.
Wes Cherry was the developer of this game, but he received no royalties.
Minesweeper is a little puzzle logic game where you have to clear the land of all the free blocks and put flags on all the spots that are mines before you can move on.
It was the beginning of a throwback to what games used to be, which were just quick time wasters, but done in a much more convenient form, you know, at work on your computer.
And I like the multiplayer online feature of Solitaire kicked ass.
Oh, totally.
It's when productivity started to evaporate in the office.
You don't want to write up that term paper? Back in 1989, I'll play a little bit of Minesweeper past the time. I'll play some Solitaire.
Screw it, I want to make those cards bounce again.
Yeah.
What is this? Talking about the 90s? Was that in the 90s?
Sega introduces America's Most Wanted, Wonder Boy 3, wanted for killing monsters and demons in his quest to lift the dragon's curse, wanted for its constantly changing adventure experience, California Games, wanted for its fun in the sun and surf, wanted because up to 8 friends can compete in great outdoor summer sports, Wonder Boy 3, California Games, America's Most Wanted, from Sega.
Bomberman by Hudson Soft for the NES.
Bomberman was released in North America in 1989, despite it being released on the MSX in 1983 and the Famicom in 1985.
Graphics are a little bit dated. But that's okay because the core gameplay is still there, it's still good.
It's an overhead maze-style game, and any of the brick-shaped, looking tiles can be blown up by bombs.
There are power-ups that increase your firepower's range and allow you to drop more bombs and make bombing faster.
And really, the entire goal is to escape basically from a dungeon by finding the staircase in every level and working your way up through, I believe, what is 100 levels.
Bombs can blow up walls, enemies, you can set off chain reactions of bombs, and you can, of course, and you often do, blow up yourself.
Not a great game, the original Bomberman. It lacked a little bit, didn't really have, multiplayer.
It wasn't necessarily a huge hit in the States, and probably not like the #1 game to get in 1989 on the NES, but it was huge in Japan, and it was just one of those series that never ended. They just kept putting them out.
Late in the 20th century, terminal boredom fell upon the land. The maker looked down and said, "This is not good." And so it was. He brought forth Genesis, a system with twice the power, twice the challenge, twice the fun, with high-definition graphics and stereo sound. And the maker saw what he had done and said, "Now that's not bad." Discovered Genesis.
The Sega Genesis, aka the Mega Drive outside the US, was the successor to the Sega Master System.
It launched in August of 1989 in the United States, and it would eventually take the country by storm.
Sega Genesis is the first home console to take a really good shot at emulating the arcade experience at home.
Sega had these games lined up ready to go, and go they went.
The Genesis is actually a dumbed-down version of Sega's arcade hardware, the System 16, which is why a lot of those games looked pretty authentic.
The first year or so of this system was based almost solely on the Sega ports of the arcade games and really nice sports titles.
And just in case you forgot that it's 16 bits, it says right on the top.
I mean, it felt like a more adult video game system. It looked different. It looked like something you can put on your AV rack with your stereo.
And it's high-definition graphics.
The Sega Genesis became super popular because it was advertised as the cool system that had sports games, had arcade games, and it had Sonic the Hedgehog eventually.
This wasn't a kiddie system. This was like, all right, you had an NES for like 3-4 years. This is the next step.
Because we were getting older, it's like, oh, I'm getting older. This is my kind of system.
They were going directly in an edgier sort of direction.
Genesis threw down the gauntlet right out of the gate with Nintendo, challenging them with slogans like, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't."
The original 3-button controllers weren't the greatest in the world. They were kind of too big.
Yeah, pretty big.
The giant controller in my tiny boy hands, it just felt so huge.
Right.
So the Sega Genesis offered 512 colors with up to 61 of them available on screen at a single time.
And it had a great sound chip.
The sound on the Genesis is FM synthesis, which is not something that you normally see on a console.
Basically, the sound chip was only as good as the developer.
A lot of those developers were able to really push that system and the sound capabilities that it had.
It launched with some fairly good games. It was packed in with Altered Beast, which was a fairly good translation of the arcade games.
As you got power-ups, you'd get one shot of steroids, you get a little bit bigger.
I love it when you get 2 of the power-ups and you're this big old buff dude with this tiny little head.
What it did manage to do was show off big sprites, lots of colors, vocal samples.
Rise from your grave.
Nintendo had such an iron fist policy with their third-party developers that people were scared to go to the Genesis.
It was the first true competitor to the NES, and Sega was the first company to knock Nintendo down a peg or two.
It was the system that would eventually make Nintendo rethink their illegal licensing practices.
Yeah. Really, from the get-go, it was really hard for Sega to grab any footing, but they did it.
This was just the start of the rivalry between Genesis and eventually the Super Nintendo with their Genesis, with their blast processing and whatnot.
This is Sega getting their foot in the door in '89. It would not be a huge system yet. Give it a year or two, it's going to come a-knocking.
Adventures of Lolo is a puzzle game developed by HAL Laboratories, the same company that brought you Kirby's Adventure.
You control Lolo, a little blue puffball, and you must rescue Lala, which is a pink puffball, your girlfriend. This is all told during a really nicely done opening cutscene.
It's a pretty simple game. Basically, you go from floor to floor in this tower with like a maze-like atmosphere, and you have to collect hearts, avoid enemies.
Moving things in just the right way, like there are certain things that can only be moved once or in one direction.
The levels get crazy. There are enemies that make beelines for you. There are Medusas that will kill you immediately if you walk in front of their eyesight, so you have to find ways to block it.
This is one of those games where you can totally doom yourself and you've got to reset the level. I hate that.
There are whole levels with waterways that you have to determine the flow of so that you can make a temporary egg raft and ride around on it. And the game's not short. It has multiple levels, and there is really no boss fight.
Hal will later go on to make Super Smash Brothers.
And Adventures of Lolo 2.
And Super Smash Brothers.
It's a totally different game experience than you've likely ever played before if you haven't played Lolo specifically.
Even though I'm not real big on puzzle games a lot of times, this is one that I thoroughly enjoyed playing even as a kid. So much so that it really stands out in my mind as one of those classic NES games that I still love to this day.
Maxis puts out SimCity, where you simulate a city.
SimCity is a city-building simulation game designed by the legendary Will Wright and released on a slew of computers.
During development, he had more fun creating the cities that had to be blown up than he did actually playing the game. And he thought, well, what if you just did that? What if you just had like this sandbox where you could create a city and it actually acts like a real city?
An addicting game.
Yeah. You create, you build, and you make your own things, and that's what really got to me as a kid.
And this was sort of a really cool concept that didn't exist before.
You're the mayor of this city, and you're starting with just a piece of land, and that's pretty much it.
But it's almost like you're playing God because you're just looking down at everything you create.
There's so much detail in this game. You can zone land, change the tax rate, and build transportation systems.
You had your commercial, your residential, and your industrial zones, and you simply had to balance the three of them with good roads, infrastructure, and power.
And you build a power plant, you need to run electrical.
Right, you need to electrical for the houses, electrical for the business. There's a fire, you need a fire department, you need the police department.
You had to make sure that you didn't put certain areas close together, could raise crime rates, and make sure you fund education properly, or else you have a stupid city.
You're always gonna have crime no matter what, unless you have a police station like everywhere.
Just the idea of like I got to make my own city, so I tried to kind of make it look like where I lived. It didn't really work out too well.
But it also let you unleash monsters and volcanoes and earthquakes and tornadoes on your city, just to see what would happen if you were feeling a little, I don't know, sadistic that day.
It's like a kid, I guess, playing with Legos or something, and then you just destroy it.
I played SimCity on the computer, but I mostly remember playing it on the Super Nintendo because the monster was Bowser.
It was hugely influential in games to come, not only within Max's own line of sim games, but things like Civilization and whatnot owe a fairly large debt to games like SimCity.
Games like Minecraft really take a lot of influence from the SimCity and the SimCity franchise. And we all have Will Wright to thank for that.
Arch Rivals.
It's fun, it's simplistic, but it was a fun, basketball game. Definitely not simulation by any means.
No.
So it's a 2-on-2 basketball game, but the thing that makes this game different than all the other basketball games out there, you're encouraged to punch your opponent.
In the arcade, you could do an attack called a flying leap where you would pull down your opponent's pants and they'd just be standing there in their underwear.
It was nice that this was a basketball game that didn't take the sport so seriously. This wasn't like a double dribble. This was a game that had fun with it.
There was also all these obstacles on the floor. There was like candy wrappers and just garbage and cups and stuff just kind of laying around the court from the crowd throwing it in. You could trip over that. So there's all these hazards.
What was really cool about the arcade version is if you had the proper board set with dip switches, you could change the colors of the uniforms, and you could put your local high school team in there.
This game is basically considered to be the predecessor to everyone's favorite NBA Jam. Ninja Gaiden, or Legend of the Ninja Dragon Sword in Japan, is a really hard side-scrolling action platformer.
Ninja Gaiden was one of the very first games to use animated cutscenes in the way that it did.
In Ninja Gaiden, you play as Ryu Hayabusa. You're a ninja who's got to go to America to avenge his murdered father.
So you slash and hack and slash enemies in this game.
You can actually cling to and jump off of walls, which is awesome.
You thought you were cool if you figured out how to jump up the walls, like ever so slightly, like do the jump and spin to get higher and higher.
You have to be precise on lots of jumps. You know, those stupid eagles will just smash into you on jumps, and that will just, I'm still horrified by that.
For some reason, Ryu can't climb up the end of a ladder. He just sort of freaks out and starts doing this when he reaches the top, and then you have to actually jump off the ladder to get to the top.
The music is absolutely fantastic. It has a different song on every level, which is rare for a game like this.
The later levels are severely harder than the entry levels, especially when you get to cliffs you have to jump on.
It's very quick, this game. It's like it's always on the go. You have to keep moving. Enemies will respawn and just beat the hell out of you.
Even though it was hard, the tools were there to keep you going, to make it past your obstacles.
Your primary weapon is a katana, but you would be lost without your secondary weapons, ninja stars and stuff that you throw projectiles.
The enemies that you are up against, especially the larger enemies like Jacquio and all those, really clever, interesting designs, almost like demonic designs.
If you lost to any of the 3 final bosses, you would end up going back to the beginning of Act 6. This was originally a glitch in the game, and it was left in as a feature.
Ninja Gaiden is probably top 5 hardest NES games, basically because of that last level.
And it spawned 2 sequels, which were also insanely difficult, if not, they were harder, probably. Yeah. I mean, God, number 3 is just insane.
2 more sequels on the NES, which would get lesser quality each time, but still fun games. So, yeah, this is a tough game. I don't want to play it.
Some people will do anything to take their favorite video games everywhere they go. But now Tiger gives you all the fun and excitement of your favorite arcade game in the palm of your hand. Games like Jordan vs. Bird. 7 game variations make going one-on-one with your favorite basketball heroes a real matchup of thrills and action. Also coming soon from Tiger, Double Dragon, Gauntlet, Karnov, and Simon's Quest. Tiger LCD video games.
In the late 80s, you started to get a resurgence of LCD games from Tiger Electronics.
The Tiger LCD games were similar to the Game & Watch series in that it had just still frames where they would just light up, and there's a thing here, and now there's a thing here, and now there's a thing here.
Previously, you had the simple ones like baseball, you had football, but by '89, you started getting licenses from video games like Ninja Gaiden and Double Dragon, which I owned as a kid.
I can see especially why parents might pick them up for their kids for a nice little stocking stuffer or something like that.
My parents couldn't afford to get me a Game Boy and a bunch of Game Boy games, but yeah, they could put 20 bucks down for a Double Dragon.
Tiger Electronic Toys. It's just like fun, but smaller. But not as fun as fun, but it's portable.
Tiger would put out dozens and dozens of these up to the late 90s.
They were never as good as the Game & Watches by Nintendo, but they were all right.
But are these actually video games? Should we be discussing these in the video game years?
Video games.
Screw it, we did the LED games back in '77. We were just ending with some sort of, circularity to close this.
John D. presents the Video Game Babes of 1989.
Hi, this is John D. with the Video Game Babes of 1989. The Welcome Girl from Super Monaco GP. You gotta hand it to the racing games for bringing the babes. The Sultan's Daughter from Prince of Persia. The babe you gotta get to quickly. Irene Liu from Ninja Gaiden. The CIA cutscene babe who in later installments dresses a little less conservatively. And Haley, Corey's babe from The Wizard. She knows the trucker's code and she's Jenny Lewis and became a rock star. The trucker's code. Does anybody else find it completely wrong that she has this really close relationship with long-haul truckers? And where are her parents? And those were the Video Game Babes of 1989. We're heading to the 90s, but living in the wild, wild west.
Video Armageddon. It's gonna take a lot of guts.
You can do it!
A little magic.
You're the best!
And the wizard, Fred Savage. The Wizard.
In 1989, we got the most impressive theatrically released commercials of all time. The Wizard.
Woo! This is the story of three kids hitchhiking their way to California for the benefit of Jimmy the Wizard.
It's essentially the movie Rain Man for children. The Tom Cruise character is played by Fred Savage. The Dustin Hoffman character is played by his little half-brother.
So Jimmy is really good at video games. Their plan is to go to California, and hey, he wants to go there anyway. While we're there, let's do this Video Armageddon thing and get $50,000.
Their final challenge is to play a brand new game that was never released before in America.
Super Mario Brothers 3! And it was an amazing reveal. I remember as a kid just being like, oh my God!
I love how nobody knows anything about Super Mario Bros. 3. They're all playing it for the first time, but they seem to know where the magical warp whistles are.
There's a secret in the game, so watching The Wizard also let you know, hey, there's something I can do in this game when it comes out.
The Wizard was the first time that I was aware of video games being in the mainstream.
Despite the fact that it was an obvious attempt to cash in on the popularity of the Nintendo name, I always found it to be kind of a cute little kids road trip movie, which is exactly what it is.
Everyone just watched it to see the video games, and there just weren't enough scenes with video games.
It was also a commercial for the Nintendo World Championships, which would be the next year. But what do you want? It's a movie about Nintendo. Final Fight was released by Capcom in 1989 and became sort of the standard bearer for beat-em-ups after that point.
The game takes place in Metro City, where the Mad Gear Gang has captured Mike Hager's daughter, Jessica, and you gotta beat those guys up.
I always loved the co-op play in the arcade, and being able to choose between three guys.
You can choose from one of three characters. There's the former wrestler and current mayor Mike Hager, my favorite.
The other characters that are joining him in the fight are his daughter's boyfriend, Cody, and Cody's BFF guy.
Yeah, the nice thing about Final Fight was that it did introduce a lot of variety in your player character so that you could pick someone that was tailored to your style.
Like Hagar was more of a wrestler.
Pile drivers.
Right, Guy was more of the ninja, and then Cody was a straight out brawler, which was really cool.
It added more weapons, more enemy variety types, more like animation and more hits and punches and kicks for your characters at the same time, and they were different for every character.
Many of the villains in the game were actually named after 80s punk and rock bands.
You got Axl Rose, Slash, Sid Vicious, Poison, Billy Idol.
Another notable nod to a real life person is you had Hugo in the game, who was essentially Andre the Giant.
Final Fight was ported to home consoles, and it also had sequels, so it wasn't the Final Fight.
Final Fight really established the beat-em-up genre going forward from that point. Every beat-em-up afterwards was modeled after Final Fight. The Adventures of Boy and Billy was a game, multi-genre, that everyone was excited about before it came out. Heavily advertised on TV and in Nintendo Power.
I always loved the box art on Bayou Billy.
Yeah, he looked like a badass, like a cool Crocodile Dundee, because Crocodile Dundee was too skinny, and this guy looked like he could beat his ass.
Bayou Billy is actually a modified version of a Japanese game called Mad City, but harder.
I really like the fact that they tried to meld three types of games in here. You have a beat-em-up stage, you have a driving stage, and you have a like-gun stage.
The driving and shooting parts of this game are actually a lot of fun if you can get to them, but you gotta get through the beat 'em up part first, and it's frickin' unplayably, it's too hard, it's too hard.
And it's almost like the enemies were using turbo. And this isn't like, like Double Dragon, when you kick a guy in the gut, he gets stunned and you can keep hitting him. Oh no, it's almost, they're impervious to pain.
In Mad City, you'd hit the guys a couple times and they'd go down, like in real life probably. Not in this game.
Unless you got a good weapon like the whip that had some range to it, or lucky enough to hold on to the handgun, In hand-to-hand combat, you are done. You're absolutely done. Because you get a couple hits and then you get hit once in return at least.
Luckily, you can practice the driving and shooting games from the main menu if you can't get past that first level, which it took me frickin' forever.
There was so much hype for this game, but nowadays no one says, you know what one of my favorite NES games is? Bayou, Billy. No one says that, but everyone owned it. The first probably major disappointment on the NES was The Adventures of Bayou Billy.
The legendary Axe is a platformer for the TurboGrafx-16 developed by Victor Interactive Software.
You're this cave dude in a loincloth and you have this axe that doesn't look so legendary.
You know, it was a unique weapon. You didn't have axe-wielding main characters very often.
The legendary axe obviously has a charge feature to the weapon, which at first I really didn't like.
The strength meter empties after attacking and then slowly builds up to maximum over time. So you've got to decide, do I want to slow down or do I want to just keep hitting stuff?
And you had some nice enemies that were pretty big sprites, so this was showing off what the system could do, even early on.
The game had excellent graphics, and it won the best game of the console and best game of the year.
You hung your hat on any kind of hopeful game that came out, and that was one of them.
This was one of the first games that was advertised on TV that TurboGrafx-16 was trying to push. And yeah, this is a fine little action game.
Mega Man 2 was like the perfect sequel to Mega Man.
The original Mega Man game didn't sell particularly well, but the development team still wanted to make a sequel, so Capcom said, alright, you guys want to do it, here's the money, but you can only make it in your spare time.
So they still had other games they had to make, but then when they were done with that, they would start working on Mega Man 2. That is love.
Mega Man 2 has got to be the easiest Mega Man game that they've ever made.
If Mega Man 1 frustrated the hell out of you, Mega Man 2 is definitely going to give you a nicer experience.
But there's more going on here. You have sub-weapons. You know, the progenitor of like the Rush system, you know.
We now have things like the energy tank, where you can pick up these tanks and collect energy to store it for a later use when you need it.
It also has the best music in any Mega Man game, by far, in my opinion, and yours too.
It's because it's driving, and it's hard, and it keeps you invested in the game. It keeps you going forward.
I really like the stage designs in Mega Man 2. You know, got the Bubble Man with the eye-piercing water, the Flashman stage with the blinking ice going all around.
Trying to outrun the dragon, jumping from block to block, and then he takes up the whole thing. You got to jump from block to block to shoot him. It's tense.
And it was like, this is what did it. This is what took that franchise off, man.
Sure, we could argue about which is the best Mega Man. Is it Mega Man 3? Is it Mega Man 2? Is it Mega Man 1? But let's not argue. It's 2. Done.
And now the forgotten video games of 1989.
Pat here with the forgotten video games of 1989. Budokan, the martial spirit by Electronic Arts. Enter a martial arts tournament and use different weapons in this computer fighting game. Galaxy Force. This third-person space shooter for the Sega Master System features super scalar-like graphics. Amagon on the NES. Shoot your way through island enemies or right up for more power in this bizarre action platformer. And Sly Spy by Data East. Play as a secret agent out to thwart a nuclear threat in this arcade action game influenced by James Bond. And those were the forgotten video games of 1989. Just because you don't remember them doesn't mean they weren't fun.